During some cave exploring or spelunking, don't know the difference between them. My family and some friends were in some deep caves, and as we were heading out, we found a silt about knee-high in the rock. Getting on your stomach, there was a tight squeeze you could get into, and it leads to a small crawl space in the rock with quartz growing on the ceiling, making a beautiful crystal ceiling display. We went in one by one, and if you are claustrophobic, this place would be your living nightmare. Most times you could feel the ceiling on your back and the floor on your stomach every time you take a breath. We went deep in and it was just incredible, like a small world tucked away within solid rock. I had made it as deep as it could go before the path went to the left and covered with stalagmites and stalactites of sediment. Everyone was having a grand time when we started feeling some trickles of water on our backs. It turns out it was raining outside, and with the way the crawl space dipped down before flattening out, this whole place would fill up with rainwater pretty damn quickly, with the only way for it to drain out was the only way we came in. It started as trickles before it went into streams and began to pool up. Being the furthest away from the exit, and you can only just crawl flat on your stomach with jagged crystal pointing down from the ceiling, I started to panic a bit. Everyone crawled as fast as they could as the water kept coming in, the streams growing larger and larger. We left one at a time as fast as we could, but it wasn't fast enough. I could feel the water coming up to my chin as I crawled behind my brother. Each inch I took forward felt so painfully slow that I could feel the walls compress around me, and the water was unrelenting, now splashing against my panic squirms. However, I was lucky. I got out just as the water was up to my lips. In fact, everyone got out safely. I am not eager to try that ever again. I was with my brother and a friend in Peppersauce Cave, Arizona. We were deep inside and I found a small tunnel that went off to the right of a path that you can crawl through. This tunnel was very narrow and I had to crawl slowly, and you could almost feel the top press against your back. I told my brother to wait for about 15 minutes, and if I don't come back, come and get me. So I crawl in about 80 feet and this tunnel starts to branch off to the right. It's getting narrower and narrower, and I thought I saw an opening at the end. I get closer with my flashlight and the opening is not at all as big as I thought it was. So it's time to turn around. I tried but no room. The walls were almost on both sides of my ribs and the ceiling was nearly on top of my back. So about 50 feet later, I'm crawling backwards on my chest, which was difficult because there wasn't any room to turn around. But eventually I get myself turned around and head back. The tunnels look different now, and I branched off another path that I didn't see crawling forward. But crawling back it was visible. I was totally lost and disoriented on my stomach and very cramped. I was getting pretty nervous, so I started to scream to my brother and my friend, but I didn't hear them. I screamed louder and louder, but still didn't hear them. I crawled on my stomach a little further and tried again, and then I very faintly heard their voices, only they were below me. So I yelled to my brother at the top of my lungs to come and get me. He starts crawling and yelling at me. The whole time I have no idea as to where he was, just following the sound of my voice. But suddenly, around the bend I see a flashlight very far away, and I realized I was way off, but eventually he found me, and I was so happy to see him. I grew up down in the desert where there was a lot of abandoned mine shafts. We would go exploring these mine shafts for fun, but there would always be some level of danger. It was common to see old abandoned boxes of dynamite and leftover mining equipment. One time we went and explored this vertical mine shaft which had a ladder that worked its way down. The ladder had a platform about every 20 feet and a hatch that would continue to the next level. I was with about 6 people, I believe. We had gone down to the bottom of the mineshaft. I would guess it was about 700 feet down at this point, and we got to the point where the shaft was full of water. We all decided to go swimming in the water, which was creepy in its own right. But as we were climbing up, I was looking up and I could see a light moving around. I began realizing that someone else was in the mineshaft. I came to one of the hatches and had just poked my head out when I looked to my right and I see a flashlight moving very fast towards me, and then the hatch was slammed shut on me. Someone was standing on the hatch and I could not open it, though eventually after about 5 minutes I was able to open the hatch, and it turned out to be someone that recognized our cast, and he was actually a friend of ours that was just messing with us, but it was very terrifying in the moment. Well, this was a tomb, not a cave. I was exploring alone in a large ancient cemetery outside of a small town in Israel. These were Canaanite tombs that were thousands of years old. Many in this region have been left unexcavated, so the area I was in looked like a huge low hill full of little dimples marking where these tombs were. So I was wandering around these shaft tombs, which were dug deep into the ground and then branched out with different spots carved out of the rock for family members to be laid. Some of the tombs were open to the air and quite deep. I got a little too close to the edge and fell in. I fell maybe 10 feet and was stuck down there. It was a vertical drop and the sides were loose stone and rubble. It was the middle of the day in Israel in the summer. I had no water and my cell phone service was kaput since I was below ground. I remember just standing there looking up out of the hole in the ground with the blazing sun above and realizing how silent it was. It was an awful feeling, stuck in an ancient grave, like I was experiencing the same silence that had existed there forever, and I was now a part of it, or some sort of deep thought like that. Anyway, I tried to scramble out, but the sides were too eroded and kept crumbling when I attempted to hoist myself out. I was really scared I might bring down a whole wall of this tomb and become the most recent burial in a few thousand years. Anyway, I was stuck for maybe 15 minutes at the most before levering my way up by holding onto some roots and bracing myself on more stable bits of stone. The feeling of getting the heck out of there was so relieving and personal. I rarely share this story because I was such a fool. So not a cave, but still a pretty scary stuck in a hole story. I explored many sites afterwards, but was always much more prepared than that day. I hadn't even told anyone where I was heading when I left the house. I don't think it would be wise for me to say the specific location, but if anyone is truly interested in some more details about what I was doing, why and where, feel free to private message me. I went caving in France when I was at school, and 2 events stick out as being terrifying and probably inappropriate for 13-year-olds. We all had to descend through a hole in the floor on a pulley belay system, and my friends waited at the bottom for me. I was one of the last to go down, and all our head torches were switched off. So when they all grabbed me in unison in pitch black darkness, I almost shat myself even though I knew they would be down there. I couldn't see the floor, so I didn't know what height I was at. A rock formation called the coffin lay between us and the exit. Basically, we had to lie on our backs and shuffle through these rock shelves which barely let us get through. My helmet got stuck and I thought I was going to die there as my chin strap was too tight to get the helmet off. Cue screeching and failing. Eventually, I dislodged myself by some miracle. 2 friends and I were caving in West Virginia. We had planned to do a through trip of Borden's Cave, going in one entrance and coming out the other side. About 90% way through, one of my friends slammed her knee on a sharp pointy rock and could not put any weight on it. Crawling back on the knee was out of the question, and climbing up out of the back exit was tricky. Any accident in a cave is 10 times more serious, but really that wasn't the scary part of the trip. We finally made it out the back of the cave at about 1 AM. So we were hiking through the woods slowly back to our car, mostly paying attention to our hurt friend. Suddenly there was a blood-curdling growly screaming noise that came from directly ahead. We looked up to see a pair of eyes at roughly eye level drop to the ground and slowly move to our left. In hindsight, it was probably just a bobcat that we startled. We like to think it was a bobcat and not a mountain lion. It makes us feel better. It was the single most instant real-life jump scare I have ever experienced.